Your business needs AI solutions that are not only ambitious, but also practical and adaptable. That's where Domo's AI and data products platform comes in. With Domo, you can channel AI and data into innovative uses that deliver measurable impact. Secure AI agents connect, prepare, and automate your data workflows, helping you gain insights, receive alerts, and act with ease through guided apps tailored to your role. Domo is built to meet the challenges of today's AI landscape with a robust, all-in-one platform powered by trust, flexibility, and years of expertise in data and AI innovation. Data is hard. Domo is easy. Learn how Domo can help you unlock your data's full potential at ai.domo.com. That's ai.domo.com.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Got a great show for you today. Have a great show for you today. I believe it is. And, in this show, we usually talk about what? We talk about psychology, we talk about life lessons, we talk about relationships. But, one of the biggest things that we talk about in this show is our relationship with ourselves, right? When we get real with this, when we get real and we start really contemplating life, one of my biggest concepts is that, we all think about purpose being outside of ourselves, right? We all think about purpose as that job we could take or that career we could do or whatever that looks like. But that's not purpose, right? Really, purpose is really what? Learning who we are, understanding who we are, and finding out everything we know about ourselves and what we need to know about to really fully understand ourselves and connect with ourselves. And I found someone today who has a really unique concept. And they have a really unique concept that I think is going to really help us to learn more about ourselves. And learning more about ourselves is not narcissistic. Okay, it's actually something that we're supposed to be doing on this planet. That's why we're here. And so the more that we can glean from other people's thoughts and ideas, the more we can begin to understand who we are and better understand really who and how we define ourselves. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, okay? Who is sailing your ship? Is it you or someone else? Is your life ship on course? Is it drifting or is it sinking? If you're off course or struggling to stay afloat, how will you achieve your life vision and life goals? How will you lead yourself, your family, your team, or even your organization? Joining me on Live Your True Life Perspectives today is Dr. Joe Famularo. Dr. Joe is an educational leader. He's a superintendent of schools, and he's also an author of a best-selling book, IOU Life Leadership. You owe it to yourself and to others. Dr. Joe, great to have you live on Live Your True Life Perspectives.
Hi, Ashley. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you on the show, and I've read your book, and I love it, and tell me more, okay, because I love the title, IOU Life Leadership. Tell me more about IOU.
Yeah, so typically when you hear IOU, the letter IOU, you think of owing someone something. But however, in IOU Life Leadership, you owe yourself and others to be a life leader in all the roles that you have in life. We must be leaders of ourselves first. Then we lead with others, whether it's leading in your family, team, or organization. So IOU stands for inward, outward, and upward living. So it's an inside-out approach to life living and leadership.
I like that because we have to do all of that. And a lot of times what we find is there's many levels of learning, right? We learn about other people in our life. We learn about other relationships in our life. We might learn about some of the pitfalls in those relationships. But when we finally turn it around and begin to learn about ourselves, that becomes extremely powerful. Tell me more about inward living.
Yeah. Well, when you said before, we need to gain greater self-awareness, and that's what the book is about. It's about looking inwardly at ourselves. It's really our most important asset. We spend so much time focusing on assets in our life. Our most precious asset is our own inward life. That's what we live. We live in our minds. So inward living is the principle of thinking, self-reflection. It's really when you're alone, what do you do most of the time? Are you thinking about, the past, things that happened? Are you thinking about the future, things I always need to do? Or are you trying to think in the moment and just feel the moment and enjoy life? it should be a balance of all those three things. But, the book really lays out how to identify what you're doing when you're inward thinking. So you might be over thinking about the future, always, I have to do this, I have to do that, and not enjoying life in the moment, because that's really what we're doing. That's what we are. We're in the moment, and to try to stay focused in that and get the great gifts of life from that life.
I agree, and it's when I work with folks, we talk about the thinking mind versus the mindful mind, and there's definitely a combination of it. But if we're living too much in the thinking mind, we're not being able to be mindful. We're thinking about the past, we're thinking about what we possibly can create in the future, but we're actually kind of missing the present moment.
Absolutely, yes. And what's the benefits from it? When you get into the moment, you think about how I'm thinking, what are the key elements, what's my goal, what's my passion in life. So we'll get into it a little later, but we have these tools, what we call essential life anchors. There are 6 of them that help us with our inward living, and it takes you through questions and really helps you to analyze what's important in your life. What we all have this one precious life, and trying to understand who we are and be able to define it in a clearer way is really the goal, and not just live through on autopilot day to day.
That's so true, Dr. Joe. And let's talk about outward living. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we're either in 2 modes, right, in our day. Inward living is when we're thinking and we're self-reflecting. Then outward living is when you're interacting with others in the world. So now I'm walking to a room, I'm picking up the phone, I'm texting someone, sending an email. As soon as you're interacting with someone else, that's outward living. So it really simplifies what we do in life, inward living and outward living. And outward living, again, is that relationship building. And there are 6 anchors that help us in our outward living. So there's a total of 12 life anchors. So outward living is building trust with each other, communication, building an environment. What's the culture that you create? Is it dynamic and positive, or is it negative and toxic? So outward living is, again, one of the modes that we look at, inward living versus outward living. And then based on those 2, there's a byproduct, there's a feeling that you get.
And then ultimately we have upward living. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so based on our inward and outward living, that's what we do all day long, there's a byproduct, there's a feeling, and we hope that it's upward living, where you receive the life gifts we call peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, and excellence. And they're very different, right? Peacefulness is the common life. It's free of disorder and conflict. That's what we all want. Happiness is that sense of joy, well-being, excitement. Healthiness, obviously, is important. I mean, we need to make sure we're looking at our bodies, our eating, our exercise, and sleeping. And then excellence is with the mind. That's when you're studying and, continuously improving whatever you want to get through in life. So that peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, and excellence is the byproduct. We hope and we call that upward living. There's a short phrase we use for peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, and excellence, which is PH2E. We want to increase our PH2E. P for peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, which is H2, and then E for excellence. And the question is, how's your PH2E? We need to analyze that and get more of it. Enjoy the great gifts of life.
I like that. I like that concept. And how did you? So some of the teachings that you teach in this book actually was kind of spurred on by your grandfather, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. My grandfather, Vincent Famularo, so on the cover it says, left from a great American sailor. And he was a great sailor. He served in World War I and World War II in the Navy. He was on the U.S. President Grant in World War I, 22 round trips from New York to France and England, transporting troops and supplies. And he would tell us stories about that journey, and through his story and his leadership coming out of the war and then building a family and, immigrating from Italy and all these great stories, he would just give us this inspiration as live in your control, what you have control over versus what you don't have control over. And that was really his theme, to stay in your controls. So many times we're focusing on all the things we don't have control over, and then nothing happens. And while there's so many things we can do and can control, so this idea is, what do you have 100% control over? So that inspired me through also many years of research and, my studies and interacting with a lot of inspirational people, I came up with this IOU, that simple acronym. So you have 100% control of your inward living, your thinking, right? And we have 100% control of our outward living, how we act out. We can't go out and grab upward living. That comes to us. So that's the byproduct of our inward and outward living. We also don't have control of what other people do to us, right? We have 0% control of how people act to us, but we have 100% control on how we want to react to it. So this is the idea of what we have control over versus what we don't have control over. And Vincent Famularo was truly an inspiration through his modeling, and each chapter starts off with a story from Vincent Famularo. So it's this great story, this line. So he really sailed the seas both literally and figuratively in this book.
You know, it was interesting when you and I first spoke on the phone a couple of days ago. It was great to be able to, to get your insight and to really understand. But you and I really talked about the leadership concept, the leadership for ourselves and the leadership of others. And, I find it very interesting when we finally realize how to lead and be a leader in our own life, it really does change our entire life trajectory.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. When we think of leaders, sometimes we think of a boss. We think of, who's in charge. But we're all leaders. And that's what we need to do is train ourselves, even from early as kindergarten. I work in a school district, and we train and we work with all of our students that they're independently leaders of themselves first. And it's about, having core values and having respect and dedication and integrity and teamwork. And it's so important. If you're, in a family, you need to be a leader. If you're a parent, you're a leader. As a friend, you're a leader. So it's this idea of leadership, which really takes us into what I call we're in the leadership age, where we all need to focus on leading ourselves first, taking those natural laws, those principles of leadership that are all around us, then to move into interacting with others and leading with others. And if you're in a position to lead others, you're at least doing it on a base on using universal life principles.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and the leadership concept is so great because when we do finally kind of realize that we have to step into that, and I think once we realize the idea of leadership, and that's something that I work with my clients, and we'll talk more about this in the next segment, but it's like when you finally realize the power you have in your own life, not only do you inspire yourself, but you actually inspire all those around you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's through modeling. That's really the best way to teach is not telling someone what to do or how to do it or act. It's showing through modeling. So if you're modeling yourself as a leader, making the choices, saying, hey, what's the right thing to do, even if others may disagree, saying that as your course. And we use this nautical theme throughout the book that you're a life ship. And, who's sailing your ship? Is it you or someone else? You're the captain. You're the leader of your ship. So you want your ship to be on course. And don't let it drift and where you're just living a life on autopilot or even thinking where you're bailing water all the time. You're in this urgent mode constantly. So it's leading your life ship and thinking about, who's on that ride with me, who's on that ship with me, and making sure your ship's in order through the journey of life, both the calms and the storms of life.
Very powerful. Dr. Joe's going to be here the whole hour with us, so stay tuned. It's really interesting. When we finally start leading our life, we can actually choose what we want in our life. And if you've ever let someone else lead you or control you or determine the direction of your life, you've seen that usually that trajectory doesn't go the right direction, right? Because people really don't know exactly what we need. We're the only one that can know what we need at the core. And that's what's going to be interesting, right? That's the key.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you might be, following what others want, right? So you're not on your course, you're on the course of someone else, right? So you want to make sure that you're on your course, on your ship.
Exactly. And so when we return to be talking about not only the tools that we can use to live by that design, we'll be talking about the 6 anchors to help you live inwardly, the 6 anchors to help you live outwardly. So we got some great stuff coming out for you. So stay tuned. Don't change the channel because we have more stuff to talk about. Okay? Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Joining me today live on Live Your True Life Perspective, an educational leader, superintendent of schools, best-selling author of the new book, The IOU Life Leadership, Dr. Joe Famularo. Dr. Joe, great to have you here in studio. I wanted to ask you about, we were talking about leadership earlier, right before the break, and I wanted to ask you, because I think a lot of times we need to figure out how to create that, because we need to live, as you say, in design and not default. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I mean, many times, we go through life and it's, we're living on autopilot. We wake up, we have our routines, we go to work, we come home, we may watch TV, and then we do it all over. And we actually call that, IOU, which is what we want, but there's IOUW, which is inward, outward, wayward living, where it's just this mediocrity, where it's really not peacefulness, it's not anxiety, it's apathy, where it's not happiness, it's not unhappiness, it's indifference. It's not healthiness or unhealthiness, we're just unfit, or it's not excellence or ineffectiveness, it's mediocrity. So this basically static and neutral culture. So, there's some questions in the book that are great to see. Are you living in autopilot? Like, some of the questions are your daily routines predictable? Do you do things without thinking? You can't seem to put your phone down. You can't seem to let go. You say yes more than no. So it's this idea of looking at your life, saying, am I living on autopilot? And then if not, what do I need to do to live more by design, by your purpose, your passion, your potential? So the idea of living your life by design versus default or autopilot will help you to get higher to those levels of peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, and excellence.
It's so true. It's very interesting when we are living in autopilot, like you say. We're doing a lot of things we're not being aware. We're completely not mindful, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's instead of the living by design, purpose, and intention, we're living by disorder, luck, and chance. And we may get some of that peacefulness, happiness. We all get it. But the question is, what happened? What preceded it? What happened before that feeling of peacefulness came, or happiness, or healthiness, or excellence? And the book is to live more with intention, to try to get more of it, to try to analyze and say, okay, here's why it happened, because I was positive and effective, not negative and ineffective. It's that idea of living a positive and effective life.
And I like that. And it's about actually being able to find oneself and being able to be determined to do what needs to be done. And that's what I think is interesting, is that, and I also like the concept, your 4 life living environments, I think is very powerful. And I like your life leadership matrix. I think that's very interesting too. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's a tool that helps you to see, where you're living. So there's upward living, right? That's the IOU, and that produces a dynamic, positive culture where you get more PH2E. The opposite would be IOD, inward, outward, downward living, right? And that's where you're negative and effective, and you feel this life drains, and it creates this toxic, negative culture. But and then there's, we mentioned before, the wayward living, IOW. That's in the middle. It's neutral. It's it's basically that feeling that things are just static and neutral, and that creates a neutral culture. So we want to strive for that dynamic, positive culture where we get more peacefulness, happiness, healthiness for our family, ourselves, our team, and organization.
That's awesome. When we return, Dr. Joe and I are going to be talking about his 6 anchors to help live inwardly. We're going to talk about his 6 anchors to help live outwardly, because this is the information that we need to be a leader in our own life. And we're going to go through the 3 life relationships. We're going to look at who is on your life ship, because this is a very big question to ask, right? This is important because if you have folks that are in your life that aren't adding to your quality of life, aren't positive, aren't there, we might need to make some changes on who we're allowing on the ship. Not like we're going to totally take them out of our life, but we need to put them at a distance and create boundaries. So stay tuned. I'll be back in just a moment with Dr. Joe, Live Your True Life Perspectives, with me, your host, Ashley Burgess. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today we're talking about IOU Living, IOU Life Leadership Living, and what that means. And joining me here is Dr. Joe Famularo. Dr. Joe is an educational leader, a superintendent of schools, and he has his best-selling book, which is really great. And, you know, Dr. Joe, we've been talking about this. I wanted to bring this up. I want to talk about the anchors to help us live inwardly. Can we discuss those 6 anchors right now? Because I think this is really going to help our listeners understand exactly the direction that you're going and how we can actually begin to put this into our life.
Yeah, sure. And as we said, we use a nautical theme. So first, it's building your life ship. So think about, our life ship is ourselves and what some tools to begin planning for our life journey. So there are many life anchors out there. There are natural laws, principles evident in all societies. We have here the 12 essential life anchors that we've looked through again, research. So I didn't invent these anchors, but what I did was design them and create a nice, easy way to remember them using the IOU acronym. So there are 6 inward anchors, and the first one is self-culture. And I coined that term, self-culture. It's typically we think of culture, you walk into a room and you feel the culture of a room, culture of a school or an office. But your self-culture is who you are. It's what you project, your personal culture. And that's important. That really embodies all the other inward anchors. It's your authentic self, your inward being. And does your self-culture bring people towards you, or do they drive them away? And you have 100% control of it. So it's based on the principle of self-identity, who you are. And the second anchor is now helping us to develop that. It's your life vision. And that's based on the principle of life living. And there are 3 things we talk about in the book. It's your purpose, your potential, and passion. So think of a circle, and the intersection is your vision. What's your purpose in life? What do you feel that, why you're here? What's your potential? What are your talents? And then what's your passion? What drives you? And then what's in the center is your life vision. And by the way, in the book, we have, at the end of each of these anchors, questions that you can answer. So it really lays itself out, and you can help work your way through to help you, again, design your inward life living. Then there's daily mission. That's what you do each day. That's the who, what byproduct. It's what you actually do. So the vision is the long-term goal. The mission is what you do each day. And then the 4th is life principles, and that's based on your perceptions, your values, what you feel are important in life. We call them life maps. It's your point of views. And principles are evident in all societies. So principles are solid. They're foundational in life. And then we look at what are the values. What are the most important values? And that's how you behave in life. And for our school, we use dedication, respect, integrity, teamwork, and trust. So you actually come up with your own life values. And then the last of the inward principles is your life goals. And that's based on the principle of life aspirations. What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? And then there's a tool that, we can get into, but it's called the Rebel Goals, which really helps you to design goals that are just right. Not easy goals that you can achieve very quickly, and not too hard, goals that are too hard. We call them delusional goals. We want stretch goals that just stretch you a little bit, that just make you do a little work, but you're successful. And, many times we set goals and then we fail, and then we say, oh, we're a failure, and we stop. So it really has a step-by-step tool to help you plan and work out those inward anchors. When you go through those anchors, you'll have a better understanding, greater self-awareness, and, again, move into your life in an inward, positive, and effective way.
It's interesting. And when I work with folks, one of the things that we do once we get to a certain plateau is we work on values, like our personal values and what our personal values are about, to understand not only what we stand for, but to also be able to create those boundaries in those relationships, knowing when something has overextended herself, or knowing when something is not exactly to our standards. Because a lot of times when we allow certain relationships to create toxicity, or we allow that, it's because we're not really standing true to our values.
Absolutely. And that's when you define them, then it's apparent when someone's with you or against you, right? And You want to keep everyone on your life ship that's with you, right? Again, we're using that analogy, and you have on your life ship, your inward ship. This is your personal ship, yourself, your spirit, your family, your friends, and that's your team. And you want to make sure everyone on that team is aligned. You have alignment of principles. You have alignment of values. You're working towards your goals. Keeps you on course and not, sinking your ship. So important to align yourself with others in that passion.
Powerful. It's like that's really defining us. So let's look at the outward anchors. Let's take a look at those, since those are quite different. You want to start with the first anchor in the outward living?
Yeah, sure. So the first six really, that has to do with just yourself, right? That's when you sit and you look at yourself inwardly. So outward living, right, is interacting with others. It's relationship. So the first one is IOU trust, and that's the principle of life relationships. I mean, the most important principle, is building trust, with others. When you have high trust, things move so quickly. So that's the foundational outward principle. And there are three things that when we call IOU trust that you have with another person or group. It's you inspire each other, you influence each other, and you have alignment of principles. When you have those three things, you have the highest level of trust that can be. And it's higher than just trust, right? You could say, oh, I trust my doctor, or I trust, you really don't know everything about them. You don't know all the principles. But when you have IOU trust, that's the highest level. You need to have that trust of character and confidence. The next is practice positive communication, and that's based on listening and speaking. We need to listen empathically, especially when there's high emotions. I have teenage kids, and when they have an issue, you need to just sit back and listen empathically, and it's hard because emotions are high. But when you have that empathic listening, you gain that trust. You gain better communication, and then speaking using the analogy of nautical analogy, we have high tide, safe talk. When the tide is high in the bay, you can maneuver your ship around very easily, and that's what you want to create when you're speaking with someone else. If it's low tide, there's a lot of obstacles in the water and things that might damage your ship, your life ship. So you want to create this high tide, safe talk to create positive communication. The next is create common language. To have common language that each of the individuals in a group, again, it's about relationships that understand each other. In my school, we use a lot of common language where, if we say to someone, think win-win, all the kids, the teachers understand that. Or if we say begin with the end in mind, before we start a meeting, what's the goal? So this idea of just creating common language with your group, your family, your team. My family, every end of year, we create a family vision statement, and it's a great tool. We talk about with my kids since they were little, and they were kicking and screaming early on. But you ask questions. How do we want people to feel when they come into our house? How should we treat each other? And we create this mission statement, and we write it, we put it on the refrigerator, and when they break it, we don't have to say anything. We just point to it. So it's a real powerful tool. Creating that common language and vision statement. And then the environment is another anchor for outward relationships. What's the physical environment look like and the relational environment? Creating traditions is another outward anchor. Celebrating, gathering events, having occasions, that's so important. And the last outward anchor is modeling a mindset of propelling PH2E. PH2E, again, is peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, and excellence. And that is so important. In fact, we have an assessment on our website called on ph2e.com, ph2e.com, and you could take a self-assessment on see what your level is. It's a self-assessment on your PH2E. Is it high? Is it low? Are there areas you need to work on? And you'll get a personalized PH2E assessment showing your areas that you need to work on. You first need to balance your propeller. So those are the outward anchors. And again, the book takes you on step by step, very simple, and goes through very quickly and gives you a good sense of your inward and outward living.
I love that. And I like the anchors. I think it's interesting, both sets of anchors, obviously, but The traditions is a great one too. Like, bringing people together. I think a lot of times we don't necessarily have that, or if we have it, we haven't breathed new life into it. But I also like the concept of really considering and connecting with the environment. What is your environment? So let me ask you. I know one of the things that I definitely want to talk about is, when we're dealing with life relationships, right? And you were talking about, what did you say, that there's three types of life relationships?
Yeah, three life relationships, and that, right? Yeah. So there's that inward life ship, right, where that's where you have yourself, your spirit, your family, your friends. Your inward outward is your colleagues, your mentors, your acquaintances, and then there's an outward life relationship, right, when you see people that you don't know. Those are strangers. So you're on your journey, and these ships are always around you, right? So your inward ship, and we said it before, you have to keep that in order. Who's on your ship? And we have this analogy that if there's someone that is negative, that's pulling you down. That's, could be in your family, could be in a friend. It's an exercise to go through that. And we say, have them walk the plank. Now, not physically, but in your mind. They walk the plank and they go into this little ship next to your boat called a dinghy, and you build that relationship. But you don't want to have these people or individuals be pulling you down that are toxic, that are negative. So you want to keep your ship in order, and that it's a great tool. I've had so much success with people when we do it at workshops, and you write down all your roles in your life. You write down all your relationships on your inward ship. It's a fun exercise, and then you start realizing, who are my key people? Who is my first mate? Who is my my assistant that's really helping me on my journey, and who are the ones that are not? And again, what we need to do is try to build that relationship with those using the outward anchors. Get them back on the ship, off the dinghy. And then sometimes from your inward outward ship, colleagues, mentors, or acquaintances, that's another ship by you. They may come onto your inward ship too, because a colleague could become a good friend. A mentor could become a good friend. And they move on to this on your inward ship. So it's a great analogy, a great way to just simplify the complexities of life, using these, inward ships, these three life relationships.
Concept of the dinghy, to me, the dinghy represents boundaries, right? It's like creating these boundaries with folks that, okay, maybe there's some toxicity, maybe there's some negativity. And I think many of us that are, many of you that are listening to the show, maybe there's a family member or somebody that you've known for a very long time as a friend, and you've had them in your life, but you haven't really been mindful enough to understand exactly what they are taking or bringing into your life. And so we're not excommunicating people, but it's like putting some emotional distance between you and that person, and really understanding, how can we recreate this relationship, or how can we make it better, or is there a distance that needs to be applied? Because if you're trying to create some amazing things in your life, if you have a naysayer or somebody that is finding fault, it's probably going to be pretty challenging.
Yeah. It's gaining greater self awareness of what's the reality of our lives. Who's with me, who's not. And again, the goal is to work with individuals that are especially in family and close friends, and to try to build that relationship up as high as. So it's about continuous improvement. It's about propelling, again, that PH2E in their relationships. So when people get closer to peacefulness or happiness, they're going to come to you. You're going to work towards it. I mean, who doesn't want PH2E in life? They're the great gifts of life.
Question, Dr. Joe, where can we find your book, and where can we find more information on you?
So the website is IOULiving.com. The letter I, the letter O, the letter U, and the word living.com. You can get all the information you want. In fact, we give tons of free things. We give the captain's logs that we talked about with the questions there on the book, on the website. The PH2E assessments on the website as well. You can go to ph2e.com if you like. And the book's available on Amazon and wherever books are sold too. But it's IOULiving.com.
That's awesome. I love that. And in a little while, when we return, we'll be talking about some golden nuggets. As you know, that in the last segment, I always discuss the golden nuggets that all of the folks that come on the show have, and we all have those nuggets of wisdom, outside of what we've created or the books or what have you. And so Dr. Joe will be sharing those with us here in just a minute, some of his thoughts outside the book. But, I want y'all to think about it. It's the concept is very strong. It's like finding that inward self. It's, figuring out who you are inwardly. We have to establish that before we can really outwardly establish anything. And a lot of times we need to step back and start from scratch. And one of the things that I think is so important is creating our value system and understanding what we value and understanding why we value it and understanding what extent do we value this and what does it mean when somebody is stepping on or taking away from something that really matters, and at what level is there the give and take, and at what level is this a no-go. And so all these things are very important. And when we were talking about the dinging concept, it's about creating that division when you're dealing with somebody that may not have the best interest for you at heart. It doesn't mean that we're not ever going to have that relationship with that person. It just means right now we're being mindful and aware of where the relationship is and actually safeguarding ourselves so that we can create the right environment for ourselves to strive and thrive, to be who we want to be and to be our true self. So stay tuned. Dr. Joe will be right back. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess. We'll be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking about IOU Living, IOU Life Leadership, and Dr. Joe Famularo is the author of this best-selling book, which is a great book. I like the fact that it has a lot of illustrations as well, and it has like some ability to kind of, I like when you read a book and it shows you what it's talking about. You can read it, it shows you, it depicts it, so it's really powerful. And right now, as many of you know, when I've had folks on the show, it's time for golden nuggets. And Dr. Joe, I'd love to hear if you have a golden nugget of wisdom that you would like to share with the Live Your True Life community.
Yeah, sure. And then as an educator, I want something that everyone can do right now. So here's an easy way to start where everyone can begin today, to begin the process of gaining greater self-awareness using IOU. So first, it's just being aware and identify when you're inward living. And say to yourself, okay, I'm inward living now or outward living. All day, we can only be in 2 modes, inward living and outward living. So when you're inward living, you're alone thinking. You might be in your car, you're taking a walk, you're at home, but you're alone. You're just with your thoughts. And then that's why identify and be aware of your thoughts. That's your inward living. Then be aware of your outward living. As soon as someone, even if you step into a room and someone's in there, your body language, you're in outward living. So it's when you're interacting with others and you can affect anyone. It's your relationship. So then you say, what is the byproduct you feel from your inward and outward living? Do you get an upward feeling? Is it a downward feeling? Or is it a neutral or mediocre feeling? And then ask yourself the question. Here's the big question. Does my inward thinking and intentions match my outward actions and living? And that's where there's always a mismatch. That's where the book will align your inward intentions with your outward actions. And a lot of our outward actions is our nonverbal communication. And we have a section called the hidden outward living dimension. It's this hidden way that there's so many things we do through hand motions, through voice, what's called paralanguage, your pitch, your voice pitch, etc., that interact with our outward intentions. So the principles in the book will empower you to live intentionally in the areas you can control. Develop this mental calmness for the things you can't control, and begin to remove negativity from around you. So you already have, everyone has greatness within you. So the I, the inward living, is who you are. Discover your purpose, your potential, and passion. And then your O is your outward living, where it's positive and effective living with relationships. And upward living is moving closer to peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, and excellence. Receive more PH2E. Start IOU Living and becoming an IOU Life Leader.
Powerful, powerful. And remind us one more time, Dr. Joe, the website where we can find information on you and the book.
Yes, and a lot of free information you can download. It's IOULiving.com, the letter I-O, the letter U, the word living.com. The book is IOU Life Leadership. You can get it at Amazon. The website will take you to a direct link. And take the PH2E.com assessment. That you'll see what your peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, excellence levels are, and how to start working on them.
I love the concept of IOU Living. It's about inward, it's about outward, it's about really creating that holistic approach to our life and being able to see ourselves successfully and clearly in a mindful way. Powerful stuff, Dr. Joe. Thank you so much for coming on Live Your True Life Perspectives.
Thanks so much, Jesse. It's been my pleasure.
Great show today with Dr. Joe. Don't forget to check out the website, ashleyburgess.com. Also, don't forget about the new YouTube videos up every single week. Just go to YouTube, put in Ashley, Berges, and you can find them right there. One of the takeaways today is just really analyzing and saying, hey, let's not live by default. Let's not live by what other people want us to live by, because you know what? They don't really know exactly what's perfect for us. It's just like going to a restaurant and asking somebody else what they think is the best item on the menu and what you should order. It doesn't work, because you know what? Ultimately, they don't know exactly what you want. And so why do we keep deferring our life to other people to make that decision for us, when ultimately when they make that decision for us, it doesn't come up the way we want it to happen? We got to think about it clearly and understand our power. Once we are able to merge into our power clearly, we're able to actually be more mindful and solid in making those choices in our life. It's no more about deferring to other people or deflecting or creating narratives that we're the victim. It's about actually honestly taking that approach, being powerful in our decision, and moving forward. I hope that this show has connected with you and has inspired you. Even if it's one takeaway, it's one takeaway that you can take into your life and use it. And I think that's powerful. I've enjoyed having Dr. Joe on the show. Don't forget, we'll be back next week as our usual time, usual place, usual stations, and then usual live feeds. So stay tuned. I look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget to live your true life, right? And live your true life perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.